The morning was still the kind where the hum of my coffee machine sounded louder than the world beyond. I was in my garage office, a high-tech fortress masquerading as a suburban aside conducting a classified FBI briefing. 3 field agents and 1 senior analyst were on the line, their faces flickering on my secure monitor as we analyzed a real estate laundering scheme masked behind phony HOAs. Then it occurred, a blur of silver and roses followed by an explosion of drywall. My screen turned to static. My headset had been blown off and my desk had slammed through what had been my back wall. Dust filled the air as a shiny SUV halted alongside my printer, its bumper sticker gleaming Empress of the HOA in tacky pink. I sat immobile, fingers still frozen over my keyboard as Pamela Reed hurled open her door with the swagger of a general wearing stilettos and yelled over my ugly office, destroying her view. My blood froze when I saw the broken encrypted router swinging from her windshield wiper. She merely crashed into an active federal operation. It had begun just like any Tuesday. I gave my husband a kiss. Goodbye, made my coffee, and settled in my clandestine hideout 1-story beige house with manicured lawn that shrieked normal but hit a nerve hub for tracking cyber fraud as a civilian contractor. I was undercover embedded, surveilling a syndicate washing money in fake sham housing associations. That morning, we'd received the go-ahead for Phase 3, a sting that involved spurious wire transfers to trap the syndicate's money pipe. The team agents in Miami, a mole within the shell company's finance division, and our lead coordinator was halfway through the discussion about an IP trace that connected spurious invoices with an HOA landscaping business when the wall buckled with a sickening crutch. Shelves collapsed, my terminal screeched error tines, and Pamela's cherry-red SUV parked smugly in the wreckage. She emerged, heels crunching drywall, and asserted, "Your ugly shed's ruining our neighborhood's charm. I warned you at the last HOA meeting. I was left speechless. You drove into my house. I survived." She shrugged. "It's not an actual house. The HOA never gave you approval on your garage conversion." Then she pulled out a crumpled violation notice and said, "This is your final warning." I gestured to the destroyed tech, telling her she wrecked government property. She smirked. "Maybe don't build a tech dungeon in a family neighborhood." As I unraveled cables, hoping the encrypted server was recoverable, 2 cop cars arrived, most likely called by neighbors who had heard the crash. Pamela played victim mode, crying to the officers about being traumatized by an out-of-control neighbor screaming at her HOA authority. She asserted she meant to burglarize my garage to grab my attention, but slipped on her foot. I took the cops down to my cloud-backed security footage, which caught her peeling out from across the cul-de-sac, heading straight for my office like a missile. When they inquired about my tech infrastructure, I informed them I worked on government network architecture. Technically true. Pamela cut me off, calling me a liar who was spying on the neighborhood, threatening HOA lawyers and zoning fines. A young officer leaned over to whisper to his partner, then moved aside to call the local FBI office. My analyst reconnected through a backup monitor, her face pale. "We lost video mid-briefing while discussing an arrest. Are you safe?" Pamela laughed, leaning towards the screen. "That's not genuine. I've seen better acting at community theater." She extended her hand to pull the plug on the terminal. I cut her voice low. "Pamela, you just interrupted a classified fraud operation." She glared, unblinking. "Good. Perhaps now you'll mow your lawn in the proper manner." That's when I realized this wasn't merely property damage. It was hindering a federal investigation. I instructed her to remain in place and not touch anything. She scoffed, strutting to my backyard to take pictures of my satellite dish for her next HOA report. I turned to the monitor and whispered, "Code green." The analyst nodded and disappeared. Pamela had no clue what she'd unleashed. 5 minutes later, a black SUV pulled in quiet as a ghost. Pamela was yelling at my solar panels when the regional FBI director appeared out badge, shining her pearl-grasping started in earnest, but she still believed she was invincible, demanding his actual ID and grumbling about counterfeit badges from the internet neighbors, assembled phones out, whispering, as the woman who terrorized them regarding mailbox colors encountered federal agents and kept swinging the local police, one joking that Pamela's face was in their call systems. DNA stepped back. The director ignored her, asking if I was all right. I nodded, explaining the destruction: a fried router, an offline server, 2 broken drives. The critical data was secure in the cloud, but the briefing had been live monitoring a syndicate connected to global crimes. If Pamela's crash had alerted them, the sting was in jeopardy. Pamela insisted on an apology for my illegal office, stating it violated 6 HOA rules. The director turned to a cop, take her into custody for obstruction and interference. Pamela's jaw dropped as they cuffed her. She screamed lawsuits, her city council pals, and auditing their pensions. She even ordered neighbors to stop filming, or else fines. Nobody cared. The street grew silent as she seethed in the cruiser, her reign as cul-de-sac queen collapsing the director, and I scoured the wreckage for physical leaks. Protocols required a hardware rebuild at the field lab, so I turned over my backups and began a report. A junior agent had flagged something strange. Pamela's HOA grievances focused on 6 residents who'd turned down her suggested landscaping service, the same one that was linked to our shell company. We extracted her SUV's onboard computer and discovered emails that referenced kickbacks with Greenscape Solutions. A flag seller, Pamela was more than a pesky neighbor. She was a part of the syndicate, perhaps knowingly. The director made a call, and soon 2 internal affairs agents and an auditor were at her doorstep. Pamela's minor crash had opened up a case of financial crimes. Her violation slip complaining about my walls, height was ridiculous, handed us the key to a 6-figure laundering operation. We left her in holding as evidence mounted. The director asked if I'd go deeper. Now that it was personal, I said yes. This wasn't just a home invasion, it was a computer crime scene, and Pamela was at its center, released the next morning with a warning. Pamela came back like a conquering hero, unaware of the federal surveillance following her. She had a front yard HOA meeting stating she'd been held by imposter agents and was the only thing keeping the neighborhood from anarchy. 2 undercover FBI agents disguised as residents mingled with the crowd, monitoring her every step. Neighbors tired of her dictatorship were prepared to turn. I played my role, feigning making amends. I apologized for being evasive, offering to work with the HOA. Pamela's ego devoured it. She invited me to her patio for a vision session, wherein she flaunted a binder with the label Priority Vendors. It was a goldmine signed payment forms, scan checks, and an invoice for $38,000 park irrigation that didn't exist. I planted a pinhole camera in her patio umbrella, taping her on calls with a Mr. Carver, a name associated with other laundering investigations. Every word she uttered drew the noose tighter. She boasted of ousting board members who questioned her and confessed to filing phony town complaints to denounce a competitor she'd. Over the weekend's end, Pamela was a top suspect. Her wreck after a tantrum had uncovered a trail of deceit over several HOAs. She thought she was engaging in minor politics, unaware that she'd signed documents funneling dirty money through federal mechanisms. We laid a trap, a phony vendor, Elite Urban Designs, with a $50,000 grant for HOA improvements. I mentioned it in an HOA email, and Pamela pounced, insisting on a meeting. We set it up at the house of a willing neighbors, wired with cameras. Pamela came dripping with designer duds, thumbing through a glossy brochure. When the contractor agent, Marcus Tate, made reference to an unmonitored 10% fund, her eyes flashed. She pushed the contract through an emergency vote, booting a rebellious board member to seal the deal. Her digital signature on the bogus contract was dynamite, tied her to the fraud ring at a subsequent meeting. Pamela whispered she'd employed the fund for admin adjustments, joking she was going to repair her SUV on HOA dime. Each word was noted. The break on the rails came when she sent an email from MC by mistake, unveiling a business tag associated with a now-deceased Nevada firm. It led Michael Carver to the architect of Syndicate's hoax, exploiting HOAs in 3 states. Pamela was his loudest pawn. Her ego dismantling his scam, we coordinated concurrent arrests. Pamela's in her HOA gala posters, declaring her the visionary of Pinewood as she spoke. Agents moved forward, reading charges: wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. The crowd braced as cuffs snapped across state lines. Carver was arrested on a golf course. The neighborhood breathed a sigh. Pamela's arrest revealed $280,000 in embezzled HOA money, laundered through phony contracts and petty fines. Her home was forfeited, later used as a community center, educating fraud prevention. The HOA redrafted bylaws, prohibiting ridiculous rules and requiring transparency. Carver's arrest broke a multi-state laundering ring, prompting nationwide HOA reforms. Months later, children chalked no more Pamelas on the sidewalk. I rebuilt my office stronger and stayed in the field, knowing people like her lurk everywhere. Pamela didn't just crash into my wall.